Struggling to go flawless in Destiny 2 lately? Embarrassed to share your Trials report in Destiny LFG? Tired of being a backseat Trials teammate? Hello YouTube, I am Sincere, a Trials solo player, and too often I see people who are too indecisive and clueless, and I decided to make a quick video to help players who for whatever reasons struggle to go flawless or have no idea what they should be doing to be a better teammate in Trials. In this video, we'll cover 5 key tips to help you go from thinking like a bot to a Trials Warlord. Think of these hints not as a step-by-step guide, but more like pizza toppings. You don't have to apply all of them at once. The more you can add to your bag, the better your Trials experience will be. Tip number 1, find your teammates. No, this does not mean hold hands and group up. Radar management in Crucible is important, but in Trials, there is a very specific way you need to be using your radar if you want to improve. Most people use the radar to track their enemies' movements, but you don't need me to tell you that. What you might need me to tell you is that you should pay more attention to your teammates' movements. This is especially important when it comes to engaging in gunfights. 2 key reasons this is important. Number 1, map awareness. Understand what angles are being watched and therefore identify points of vulnerability for both you and your opponent. Chances are if you have 2 teammates watching a contested lane, you'll have the opportunity to pull off a flank or counter the opponent's flank. Understand when you have leverage. If you have an opponent's dead orb, you don't need to take unnecessary risks. In the same vein, always be aware of where your teammates' dead orbs are. A smart res can instantly change the complexion of a round. And number 2 is map positioning. Every time you move, you need to check your radar. Situations in Trials develop rapidly. Moving on to tip number 2, safe damage. Using cover is a very important part of PvP, but especially more so in Trials. Sure, you have class abilities that can save you in a pinch, but learning how to navigate cover, which is map specific by the way, is even more important. When it comes to dealing damage and using cover, I want you to think about these 2 key things. Number 1, damage dealing. This is what you traditionally expect, dealing damage on an opponent. Number 2, exposure time. This is super critical. This is how much time you spend exposed doing damage. It's super important to have an internal timer in your mind about this, because once you start shooting, the information you gathered prior to engagement is now effectively old. Think about it this way. Once you commit to doing damage, you need to be okay with giving up the kill. It's more important that you deal damage, get back into cover, and reevaluate the situation. Often you'll find that you will catch an opponent who's trying to get the drop on you in a more vulnerable position as you retreat back into cover, while your teammates who are likely holding a different angle, they clean up the kill. Learn not to overcommit to a gunfight. Deal your damage quickly and then retreat back into cover. Don't tunnel vision. Be a team player. Time for tip number 3, KYP, know your personnel. This is as self-explanatory as it sounds. KYP for both your teammates and opponents. Get a general sense of your teammates and opponents' loadouts, because that informs their decision making and the angles they are likely to hold. But most importantly, KYP for the dark horse in the lobby. There's always a player or 2 that is playing in a very unconventional manner. For example, using bows, fusion rifles, special grenade launchers, or even things like the osmiomancy gloves. It's important to memorize the names of these players as they tend to cause chaos. On the flip side of this, every lobby will have something like a MVP type of player. MVPs are usually hard kills, they know what they're doing, they have a way of controlling encounters on their own terms. Finally, there's always the risk that you have an over-aggressive teammate, usually a Titan, let's be honest, that is thirsty. These types of players, while frustrating, they create openings in your opponent's defense that you can exploit. Learn to make a mental note of the dark horse and the MVPs in the lobby to help you better prioritize kills. And if you match 3 meta bubble titans, well, you're just simply Now, tip number 4, be ready to make quick decisions. A lot of times in Trials, it's more important to make quick decisions than it is to make the quote unquote right decision. This sounds paradoxical, but I assure you it is not. Because of the nature of trials, players are usually stuck processing the situation. And a lot of times you can catch players with their pants down as they don't expect a repeat, a re-challenge, or a bold, audacious move. Even if the decision you make ends up being the quote-unquote wrong decision, it's better to be an active thinker. Most bad players in Destiny, they make premeditated decisions and they don't course correct. This is why you see a lot of Titans that will straight line you, or players who will overcommit to a gunfight when they don't need to. The skill of making quick decisions is absolutely key to being a better player. And the more you apply these tips, the more natural and effective your flowchart is going to be. Finally, tip number 5, relax. I don't mean this in the sense of when you're having a heated exchange with someone and then they tell you, oh, just calm down, as if it's supposed to have some sort of soothing effect. What I mean by this is if you play calmer in Trials, you'll start to see that a lot of people play desperate and panic. If you can keep your poise and stay composed, you'll find that people tend to make the mistakes for you. Even against better players, this happens. In close games especially, people are desperate to take the initiative or press their advantage. Learn to use this to your advantage. If there's one thing I want to say you absolutely should learn not to do, it's playing desperately. A lot of situations you'll end up trading when you don't need to, when you're desperately chasing a cleanup kill. Instead, apply the previous tips, take up better angles, gain a more advantageous situation for yourself, and then re-engage on your own terms. This also applies to desperating a downed teammate's res. Desperate plays are easy to read, and when you're easy to read, you become extremely vulnerable. Plus, Trials loot just isn't all that. But Trials is the most fun you can have in Destiny these days, at least in my opinion, at least when you're not fighting crouch spamming meta titan. When it comes to Crucible strategy, there is so much to go into, so much to consider situationally. Hell, each of these tips themselves, quite frankly, they deserve their own dedicated video. But I've quit Destiny more times than I can remember since the last video I uploaded, and for now, I'd like to get back into the habit of uploading again. I don't see many PvP dedicated videos these days on the strategic side of things, so if there are any particular things you guys struggle with, let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, your boy Sincere signing out.